my name's Elena. I'm a 3D artist, and today I'm making a type of video that I don't usually make. I'm making a tutorial, and we'll just see how this goes. I'm going to try to give clear instructions on how to do things. At the same time, though, I don't really know what everybody's base knowledge will already be. So I'll just say right now that my comment section is a no dumb question zone. If there's anything at all that you need me to clarify, then just let me know. For this, I'm going to be using Maya 2018. I wouldn't really say that the year matters, so just use whichever one you prefer. I just use 2018 because my favorite renderer is on here and the plugins don't update beyond 2018, so I'm kind of stuck with it. And by the way, if you can hear my air conditioning going on and off, sorry, I tried to close doors and make sure it wouldn't be a problem, but I don't know what my microphone's going to pick up. So first things first, because I'm making something that's based in real life, I'm looking up reference. So I Googled tulips, especially looking at poses, thinking, okay, which pose do I really want to emulate here? And for the rest of the video, even if I don't have the reference pulled up where you guys can see it, just know that I have it on a separate screen and I'm frequently referring to it. Now that I've got that set, I'm going to start with the petals. I bring up a square and then I start morphing that how I want. Now I'm going to assume some base knowledge that you guys know how to navigate around in Maya, so I'm not going to explain that. I bet you also know like R for scaling, E for rotating, W for moving, that kind of thing, so I'm not going to get into that. Even though I just did. But anyway, I always want to get the most basic shape down before I start adding any kind of definition. And for now, this is good. I'm going to rotate this petal just so it's facing me long ways. And something handy is that if you want to rotate in 15-degree increments, you can hold down J and it'll snap to that. So since I only want to rotate this 90 degrees, that's super useful for me. And if you want to just do it freehand and correct it over here, then you have that option as well. You can just type it out. But the thing with these kind of programs is that it's best to learn just as many hotkeys as you can, because it makes your life a lot easier. So now I'm going to hold down Shift and right click so I can start adding divisions. To do this, I selected the multi-cut tool. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift so I can snap to the center of this and just get one right down the middle. So in that case, it was useful to snap to the middle, but sometimes you just want to add a ring of your own free will. So just hold down Control and it'll let you add a loop wherever you want it. If you don't hold down any keys at all, it'll just let you cut free shapes wherever you want them, but I want the loops. So I'll hold down Control. I'm going to just put right here, and around here as well. And then I hit Q so I can select what I want, and I do right click so I can get into vertex mode. I select these along the top here, and I just want to scale them in a little bit. And I want these up a little higher, so I'm just going to select those, hit W, and move them up. So this right here is the uncute stage of modeling. At this stage, I'm keeping things just as low poly as I can, and that's deliberate. I'm not in any kind of rush to add definition to things, because when you start adding more and more definition to things, it kind of complicates your process if you haven't really nailed down what the basic form of your shape is. So make your life easier, start low poly, get the basic form down, and then you can move on to making it a higher definition. So now I'm looking at the reference that's on my other screen and trying to count flower petals. Counting these up, it looks like the outside petals would normally amount to about 4, and there's a second inner layer that might be about 3, so I'm going to work off that. There are definitely other reference pictures that might show many, many more petals hidden on inner layers, but I'm not going to I don't care. I'm going to pose it in such a way that those won't be visible, so it doesn't really matter to me. Now I'm going to make some categories of these petals. I'm going to make 4 that are just a little bit wider. Those will be my outside petals. And what I did there was Control D for duplicate, and then I shifted that over to the side. And what I can do now, with adding that transformation, is do Shift D, and it'll duplicate the petal again with that added transformation. So that makes it easier for me to space them out how I want them to be. So here's my second category, and I think these should be just a little bit narrower, and I only want 3 of those, so this number of petals is fine for me. I'm also going to go over here and make a couple of leaves. So I see this one little reference picture up here that I want to duplicate, so I'm just going to put these blocks of leaves over here as a reminder for myself. I'm going to set down just the most basic shape for these leaves right now. Add some edge loops. And what I did right there was I didn't go clicking around to get back to that tool again. If you want to use a tool that you were just using, like you're on the select option right now and you want to get back to the one you were just using, you hit Y to get to the most recently used tool, or you go over to the little menu to the absolute left over there, and you can see the most recently used tool underneath all the main ones that you would typically use. So you just click on that without having to go through the mouse options to find it again. Now I'm going to add some divisions in the centers, and I'm going to make them a little wider and taller, but only in those center points. So now we got our petals and our leaves, and they're all looking super low poly, just how I want them at this stage right now. Okay, I had to take a quick break because my recording software did something weird. I'm not sure exactly where I was, but I think I was just about to pull out my tablet so I could start sculpting. So I have a little drawing tablet. It's just a plug-in bamboo Wacom something or other. I think I got it in like 2012. Because yeah, someone gave me like $100 gift card to Staples. So I got it, and it was awesome, and I've had it all those years since. So yeah, you don't need anything too schmancy to do this. You just need whatever tablet you got. And I would say that you do need a tablet. I know I watched a Flipped Normals video where they were talking about how some people comment like, oh, I'm so good at sculpting, like just using my mouse to click around. And they were saying, like that's fine. It's a skill to have, but it just would make your life a lot easier if you had a tablet. It's just easier on your hands. And if you just so happen to have someone in your life who wants to give you a $100 gift card to Staples, then, take advantage of that. And then you won't have to get yourself a new tablet for 12 and counting years. Alright, so let's get into sculpting. I have all these meshes selected, and I'm going to go over to the sculpting menu. Oh, but while I'm at it, I may as well just subdivide everything right now, because try as you might, you won't be able to sculpt from just what's on the screen right here. So I'm holding down Shift, I do right click, and I'm just going to smooth these. Now I'm going to jump to this tool at the far left first. And the thing is, I don't know, I go based on vibes. Whichever sculpting tool I need at any moment, I just get used to switching around. And the fact that I had all 7 of these meshes selected before I went into the sculpting menu means that I'll be able to jump around to each of them as I want to without having to click into each mesh one at a time. I think I'm actually going to use the grab tool. I'm going to make it bigger by holding down B and then dragging with my mouse. And you can see the circle on the display in front of you is getting bigger or smaller just depending on what you want. So now I'm going to round out each of these petal shapes just by kind of smushing up the center of it. And you might be wondering why I'm altering each of these individually. And it's really just that I like all the individual characteristics that come out of each petal when I do it this way. Like if I did some major alterations to them and then duplicated from there, I feel like I would lose out on some of the natural flow of the petals. It's like when I'm making a flower or something that comes from nature, I like to embrace as much difference that comes up from the sculpting process as I can. So while frequently glancing at the reference I've got up, I'm going to alter each petal to make it look natural. I'm just going to keep going through one by one and smushing these around however I see fit. And I'm probably going to speed up this footage a lot in post, just because I'm not sure if you guys want to watch the whole thing in real time. Although, if you would prefer it to be all 100% real time, even including just silences as I concentrate, then just let me know in the comments. Now I'm going to go make those bottom 3 curl a little bit more, because they're going to be on the inside of the tulip. And I think that they just need to be that shape. And all the while, I'm checking my reference to ensure that I'm on the right track. And you know what? Looking at the reference, it seems like the petals on the inside aren't all that much narrower than the ones on the outside. So I'm just going to squish those out some more. Now I'm going to start using the sculpting tool. But before I do that, I'm going to go back into object mode and subdivide again, because I'm about to add some detail that won't really sculpt on such low definition. So I'm in the sculpting tool now, and the way it works is just on the normal settings, it'll add some mass, and then if you hold down Control, it will take that mass away. I'm not really demonstrating this clearly because I have pretty low strength on right now. So let me just jump into the settings and change that up a bit. So I'm going to make this brush a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to add some lines down the center, just kind of like divots. And again, I don't know what everyone's base knowledge is for this program, or just for 3D in general, but this black spot right here means that the geometry is clipping through itself. So that's something that I need to fix. I do that by just adding a little bit of mass. Now I'm going to go back over to the grab tool, because there's this shape I keep noticing on the tops of the petals where it kind of dips in a little bit. Now I'm going to get the sculpting brush again and start adding to the sides, because before I had taken away some mass in the very centers, but I think I just want to add a little bit of mass along the sides. And I'll keep jumping in to explain a little bit of what I'm doing, but it really just boils down to that I keep looking at the reference and seeing what I've got going on and seeing how I can match it further and further, and also kind of going by vibes. If it seems like, well, I don't want to match precisely to what I see, I'm just gonna go with my heart. And I'm gonna deal with the inside parts of the petals now, and from the reference it looks like they have a pretty similar look to the outside. It kind of dips in the center. So I'm gonna add that now. I'm just gonna remove a little bit of mass because I'm kind of pushing it right now. The geometry really wants to clip through itself, and while I want this to be a pretty narrow petal, I don't want any clipping. And now I'm gonna go along adding some kind of wavy features. Lots of flower petals and leaves have like this, there's a structure to them. They just look kind of wobbly. I'm just adding some details that will represent that. So in this video, I'm only planning to show my modeling process, and I'm just going to texture things in my own time. But that's something to keep in mind, is that there are some details that I'm not going to sculpt in here because I know what I intend to do when I start texturing. And that's the thing, is that certain details don't have to be part of the geometry as long as they're part of a texture map. So yeah, now just going through, making them a little curvier again and again. And as much as I'm preparing each of these meshes right now, I know that as soon as I pose them, there's going to be a lot of clipping. I'm going to go over to the smooth tool now, because it looks like a few sections over here are bumping up a little bit sharply, and I just don't like the look of it. And sometimes it's kind of hard to see when you're in this mode, because I have wireframe display on right now, just kind of by default. So I'm going to go into the settings and take it off. The way I did that was by double clicking on the tool I'm in, and the wireframe display is toward the bottom of those settings. And now I'm going to get the sculpting brush and make it a little smaller and just add more rumples on the sides, just so it's not perfectly smooth. Because even knowing what I'm planning with the textures, I just want to have a little bit of rumpliness on the form itself. That way, when the light catches it, you can see how it bounces off in certain ways, and that's what I'm going for. I'm going through to do that to the inner portions as well, and now checking back with the reference, it looks like I've been kind of neglecting the outer edges of these. I'm going to go in with a small grab brush and just kind of go back and forth with all these strokes. I'm not doing anything deliberate, I'm just trying to get in as much randomness as I can, because that's what nature is about, you know? Alright, so these petals are looking pretty cute to me, so I'm going to go through and position them. And I'm going to start with these folks right here. I'm actually going to select all these and rotate them first so they're standing upright. I'm going to do this from above just so it's clear to see. For those not in the know, I hit the space bar to pull up those extra views, then I hovered my mouse over the overhead view, and then I hit the space bar again. And you see, for all of the sculpting that I did before, none of the shaping is really finalized until it's in position, so I need to shape these more shapelier. Another thing is all these shouldn't be the exact same size, so I'm going to make this one smaller, and I also want to curl it inward a little bit. Yeah, because some tulips are spread open, but the reference that I like and that I'm trying to emulate are the ones where the insides are really closed up. So I'm going to angle these a little differently so that it's just more enclosed. And you know what, I'm just going to copy this one right here and make it smaller, and then just prop it in the middle to make sure it is perfectly enclosed. And I'm just going to tweak things for a while until it looks right to me. And I don't want anything to clip through, so I'm just going to be mindful of that. And I'm just going to tuck in these outer ridges, because I think those are going to get in the way as soon as I add the outer petals. Alright, I like the way these look positioned that way, so I'm going to add these folks to the mix. Now that they're in position, I'm just going to get the grab tool again and start pushing and pulling. So I don't know if I always know tulips by sight, but I do have one fun memory of tulips, and I think I've talked about this in a previous video, because usually my channel has videos where, I usually do time lapses of all my 3D projects, and then my sister and I narrate what's happening, or more accurately, my sister and I are just talking story as the art whizzes by. But anyway, in this previous video, I think I mentioned how for a birthday of mine, 2 of my brothers showed up to breakfast, like a group breakfast, and they had a last minute thing planned where they handed me tulips and 2 single dollars that they just happened to have in their pockets. So I enjoyed the tulips for however long they lasted, and then the $2, I just kept those. I still have them in a memory box of mine because it's just cute. It's looking back, I know I always thought that they were so old and mature, but I think at the time they must have been in their late teens or even early 20s. It's been there. It's don't have a gift prepared for your sibling, have $1 from my pocket. It's just cute. So yeah, silly memory, but it gives tulips a special significance to me. While I'm working on this, I'm trying to decide whether or not I should explain UVing after all this. I'm tempted not to, just because, I don't know. I don't like talking about UVing. Okay, after lots of fiddling, I think I have all these petals arranged in a way that I like. So I think the next thing I want to do is make a stem. So I'm going to make a quick cube. I'm going to bring that over here, and I'm just going to elongate it. So I'm looking at reference now, just going to quickly Google bottom of tulip just to see how everything joins. Alright, I'm going to add just a little bit of the tiniest bit of detail at the top of the stem, because it looks like it widens just the teeniest bit at the top. Just going to do Control E to extrude. Just going to widen this section a little bit, and then I'm going to extrude again. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this very top face, because it's not going to be visible. But that kind of thing is user's choice. I know for my own purposes that there's never going to be a point where the stem is isolated in any kind of render that I do, so I'm content with deleting some portions of it that are not going to be visible. But if for your own purposes you know that the stem is going to be isolated at some point, then it's worthwhile to just keep that little square. It's just everyone's own individual choice. Something about this stem seems like it's placed a little off kilter, so I'm going to go over to the topmost view, turn on wireframe view so that I can see through everything, and then place the stem more closely in the center. Now I'm going to start making everything connect. So I'm going to go over here and select this little grouping of vertices. And you can see that if I start moving them as they are right now, it creates a really harsh look. So what I'm going to do is hit B, and that brings me into soft select mode. And that way I can drag things around and it won't be harsh like before. And you hold down B and drag your mouse in order to minimize or maximize the amount of influence of your soft selection. So I like what I see is selected, so I'm going to drag it down a little bit and then scale it down. And then I'm going to drag it forward a little to get it closer to where it will meet the stem. And I'm just going to do this each time with all the other petals. Another way I can do this, instead of doing it one mesh at a time, is to select them all and combine them into one object. You do that by holding down Shift, right-click, and then there's a Combine option. While I've combined them, I'm just going to do a quick little delete history. I typically do that by hitting Shift-Alt-D, but there's also a little button over on the top menu that might make it easier for some folks to remember. You can do it also by going up to the menu. You go to Edit, Delete by Type, and then History. But yeah, my habit for this particular command is to use the hotkey. And now I'm going to go and select all the bottom-most vertices. I'm going to extend the soft selection a little bit, and that way when I drag things in, everything is affected. And seeing how that turned out, I think I want to drag this petal down a little. And after doing that one action with the soft select on all those meshes, I don't really need those petals to be combined anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and select them and then do Shift, right click, and extract the faces. And that'll make each of the petals their own separate mesh again. And now just to keep things a little organized, I'm going to select all these again, then go to the outliner, and you might be able to see that all these meshes are still under the same group. And that's just what happens when you extract faces. So again, with all those selected, I like to do Shift P, and that'll unparent them from that group. And then I like to do another delete history, and it'll take away that empty group. And this is a good habit, is to just make sure that your outliner is organized. So I see another empty group up here, and I'm just going to delete that. And you'll notice that nothing in my outliner is named yet, none of my assets, and that's a personal preference. I don't like to name any of my assets until the very end, just because of the amount of time that I combine meshes and then extract those meshes. It just gets the naming kind of goofy, and I don't want to have to rename things multiple times. So like I said, I'll just save it for the end. That's a personal choice though, so if you're at this point where you're just having a hard time keeping everything organized and you would like to refer to the outliner to see where all your petals are and where your leaves are, then that's your own choice. I haven't mentioned this yet, but you might have noticed that I keep doing quick little saves in the middle of recording, so just make sure that you're also staying on top of that, because it can be so disheartening if you have come across like a breakthrough in your work, but you haven't saved in like half an hour, and then maybe your power goes out in your house, and it's just like, you lost it. You don't get to have that anymore. It's really sad. So just save yourself the heartache by saving frequently. And if you feel like you're about to take kind of a risk with how you're modeling things, version up. That way, if you don't like what you did in your most recent file, you can always go back to the previous version and everything that you had been content with before is still there. Okay, then anytime I get to a section where some geometry is clipping through, I just make sure to select that and then push it back where it belongs. And right here, these little edges are swooping out in a way that I don't like. And one easy way to kind of shrink it down is to use the smooth tool. And I realized in doing that I brought this petal a little further away from the stem, so I'm just going to push that section back over. And see, now the geometry is clipping through itself a little. So I've overtaxed that. I'm just going to go in and fix it. And I think I'll even isolate it just to really get to the heart of the problem. So I hit Control 1 so I can view just the one object I had selected. Now I'm going to fix up that geometry on the inside because that's what's clipping through. Alright, so I'm satisfied with that. I do Control 1 to bring everything else back. Alright, still checking the reference frequently and going by vibes. I see one thing that I really want to fix right now is to do with the bottoms of the petals again. So I'm going to combine those folks once more because they're not supposed to be so peaked like they are right now. So I'm going to drag them up like this. And sometimes I get kind of sick of sculpting things because, I don't know, there's this type of shape that I feel like the Maya sculpting settings kind of encourage, which is for these things. Like you'll see the edges here, they all flare out in a type of way. And I wasn't really doing that deliberately. It mostly works for the shape of the petals, but right now, for example, I just don't really want that. So I'm sick of sculpting. I'm just going to grab the vertices manually and shift them over. See, so if it's just really not working for you to sculpt something, then you have options. It's just that for the most part, it is faster to sculpt. There's less, selecting and clicking and dragging and all that jazz. But again, if sculpting just really is not working for you at the moment, you can always go back to the basics. Alright, and in taking a step back to look at this, these petals really are not poofing out like I want them to. So I'm going to select all of them and start poofing. This is like the theme of the video, but really, it's all about vibes and just trying to match the reference. And the more you correct certain details, the more that other details that don't look right will get revealed to you. And you just deal with those little by little. Alright, now I'm going to go down here to get this very bottom face and extrude it, and then scale it down just a little. And then I'm going to smooth it. And this is as much definition as I want at the bottom. I think I want this stem just a little bit shorter though. And again, checking my reference, I'm going to see how much tulip stems really curve. It looks like it's not really that much, so I'm just going to add a little bit to it. And with as little definition as I put on this stem, it looks like that curve is a little bit too harsh for some of those edges. So I'm just going to subdivide those. I select that harsh edge loop, and I hold down Shift and right click, and I'm just going to bevel it. Now this edge also looks a little bit harsh, so I'm going to select that one too. And because I had just used the bevel command, I was able to hit G, and it just repeated that most recently used command. I'm going to do the same up here, and what's funny is, like right now, because I'm doing a tutorial, I'm suddenly thinking that I'm so sure there's a hotkey for beveling, so I'm just going to test it out. So I think it's Control B, and what do you know? So yeah, learn from all the habits I still need to form. If you want to bevel something, don't go clicking around with your mouse, just do Control B. Alright, so now I'm going to go back over to the base of the flower, and because I subdivided that stem, now everything is more workable for me. So I can stop futzing around and just move those petals around to their final positions. And the more I'm looking at this, and the more I'm looking at reference, it's like the bottoms of the petals don't peek out so much like that. I don't know why I keep going for that shape, but it's not what they should look like. So I'm just going to select some vertices and rotate things around so the petals are a little bit more flat on the bottom. And these kind of sharp points right here, I'm going to fix that later with the smooth tool. But yeah, I just want to get these petals right. They've been weird this whole time and I'm sick of it. Alright, now that I got all those acting the way I want them to, I'm going to go back with the smooth tool and correct the harshness that came about from rotating all those vertices. And suddenly, as I'm looking at it from this angle, I realize how ovular this shape is, and I don't want it to look like that. So I'm just going to scooch things around some more. Now I'm going to make sure that there are no gaps at this angle, because again, I'm looking at the reference, and it looks like all the petals converge so smoothly to the stem. So I'm just going to mimic that look. Alright, I'm happy with the base of that flower, and now looking at the rest of it, I'm pretty happy. Oop, that one looks like it's clipping through itself a little, so I'm just going to isolate that and deal with it. And while I did that, I realized that all the kind of rumply detail I had added in my initial sculpting phase, before I'd even posed anything, it seems like all the shifting around I've done of all the petals has kind of obscured it. So I'm just going to go through and add some more refined rumples, and then I can feel happy again. It's nothing too wild, just a little rumpliness, so that none of them are too smooth. Alright, now what is next? Time for leaves. And these leaves are gigantic. They don't need to be that big. So I think for these, what I want to do first is get them in position. So while I'm doing these leaves, it's the same thing as what I was saying before. It's like a combination of going by vibes and going by reference. I think this is where I want them. Alright, I'm just going to fix it on this plane as well. And that's where I'm at. And you know what, looking at this, I think we're just done. Just kidding. So I'm going to combine these guys for a second, just to make my life a little easier. What I'm doing right here is beveling this center point, just adding a little bit of definition. That way when I smooth the leaves out, that point will be preserved. And now I'm just going to go straight in with my sculpting tools again. Following reference and following vibes, both are crucial. And just like before when I was getting sick of sculpting the petals, I'm going to go into component mode here so I can adjust the vertices themselves. Right now I'm going back to sculpting. I've got the grab tool. Just gonna make sure these leaves curl in the way I see them doing in the reference pictures. And as I'm working on this, I'm realizing I probably should have shaped these a little better before I positioned them, because now I'm just working at kind of an odd angle. But honestly, I'm not too concerned. It's gonna look good in the end no matter what. This whole time, I've been thinking about whether or not I should have background music in this, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go with no, because if you guys want to put your own music on, I don't want you to have to contend with my own royalty-free instrumental music. Like, it's just not necessary. My main reason, though, I know, is just that I've gotten to a point where I can recognize some of the royalty-free music I hear in other people's videos. So whenever I hear that, I'm just like, I know you. So I'm just gonna leave it silent. Just listen to my air conditioning. Another thing is that I'm not well practiced in explaining what I'm doing, so I hope that anyone who came to this video to follow along finds it easily follow-alongable. And if anyone has any questions, like I said at the beginning, my comment section is a no dumb question zone. Just ask away. And right now, I have so few subscribers that I think it's kind of to the benefit of anyone who stumbles onto this video that I'm still really excited by any comments I get. So if you ask me a question in a comment, then I'm very likely to respond. And if there are any kind of props that you'd like to see me model and have me explain, then really just suggest anything at all. And if you want to take a closer look at this model after I'm done with it, I tend to post my stuff on Sketchfab, which lets you toggle around people's work and like zoom in and all that jazz. So I have that linked down in my description. I also tend to sell my models on CG Trader, so if you want the model for yourself, you can buy it there. And again, that would be in my description. I'm going to subdivide this again. There, see? Looking lovely. And the thing is, when you smooth stuff, it kind of makes the geometry shrink in on itself a little bit. So I'm just going to get these closer to the stem again. So there's this thing I'm noticing on the stem here is that I can see all the geometry, which is not how it's supposed to look. So the way to resolve that is just to soften the edges. You do that by selecting all those edges, hold down Shift, right click, soften harden edges, and then soften edge. And now I also want to go through with the sculpting tool and, like I did with the petals, add some rumples. I don't want wireframes on right now, so I'm going to do Control, Shift, right click, and then uncheck the box that says Show Wireframes. And there we go. I like the look of that. This is the level of detail I'm content with. Some people might think this is way too much, other people might think it's way too little, but this is just the look I was going for, and it's the look I'm going to stick with. Just going to pop a quick save on this. Alright, so up next is UVing, because yes, I've decided I will explain my UVing process. Okay, but first things first, before I UV anything, this is the point when I organize everything in my outliner. So in my scene, I'm going to select all the meshes, and I'm going to unparent them all. So again, that was Shift P, and then I do a quick delete history, or better yet, I just go up to where all those, there are a lot of like modeling quick buttons over here in this menu, so I just click these three. So this will center everything, delete history, and freeze transformations. So now with all these clean meshes, with no history, no transformations, I'm going to grab them all again and do Control G to group them. And I'm going to go with my own personal naming conventions. I'm just going to do Tulip GRP, Tulip group, and I'm going to select the stem, and I'm going to keep it really simple, just Tulip underscore stem. And obviously you can come up with your own naming conventions. This is just what I prefer to do. So I'm going to select these leaves, and then I'm going to go up to this little section right here and set it to rename. And this is so handy because you just do, in my case, tulip underscore leaf, enter, and it will automatically number those assets for you. So here we go. There's leaf 1, leaf 2. So now I'm going to do the same thing with these petals over here. Tulip, petal, bam, and names each of them accordingly. Perfect. So now I have all these individual meshes handled and organized. So I'm going to click on the group, and I'm going to hit those 3 options again. Center, delete history, freeze transformations. Okay, now with that group still selected, I'm going to go up to absolute transform. It's in the same place as the rename option was. You just have to click around a little bit. And while I'm in the move tool, I'm going to zero out these coordinates. X, Y, Z, 0, 0, 0, enter. And that's going to place my group in the very center of the scene. Now this way, if you export the group and then import it into a new scene, it'll show up right in the center of your scene. So it's just convenient. Like, you always know where it is, and it's not going to show up somewhere random. And now, because you just moved that group to be at the center of the scene, it has some transform information on it. So you just go over to that little button up top and freeze those transformations again. So now I just have a clean slate. Great meshes that we can make UVs for. So this is the way I tend to do things, is first I select all the meshes in object mode. And then over in the UV view, I'll switch it over into edge mode. I'll select all the edges and sew them together. Because sometimes when you're modeling, it'll create random cuts in your UVs. Like, not exactly random, it's like it happens when you extrude things or any other kind of action. But the thing is, you don't really want those cuts that the program made. You want to make your own cuts because it's, there's something to be said for human intuition. So I sew all those edges together, that way I can make my own cuts where I want them to be. And I realize I'm presuming a lot of knowledge of UVing from the people watching this video, so again, if you need some clarity on the subject, just let me know. So now these are the most basic shapes you can ask for, so I'm just going to cut them all in half. I'm going to go through to each mesh, just finding the center line that goes all the way around each of the leaves and the petals, and just selecting that loop. And I'm holding down Shift so that I can keep selecting a bunch of loops, so I can just cut them all in one fell swoop. So now I do cut, and I have my settings on that show where each of the cuts are, just so it makes it easier for me to see. And now I'm just going to swoop in a little closer, because I think I missed one petal in the center. And hey, at this stage, even if you notice some clipping, you can still fix it. See, sometimes you think you're done modeling something, but then you look again, and it turns out actually you're not. Alright, that looks good. Now back to the matter at hand. Alright, there's that missing petal. Cut. And now the stem. I think I'm just going to go straight through the center here. And because this stem is so long compared to every other mesh, I'm going to do another little cut that bisects it. Alright, so unfold. And then I like to do a quick layout. I'm not going to use this layout, but it's nice to see everything in one place like this. And now, I don't know. Like, this is a reason why I'm hesitant to explain my UVing process. It's because, like, it's just kind of tedious, and it seems like it's never going to stop being tedious. Whatever, let's just carry on with my UVing process for what it's worth. So what I did here is I selected one of the shells just at random, and then I'm going to go over here to the transform options. At the beginning of the video, I said I was using Maya 2018, and I mean, I think that every version of Maya would have this, or at least something like this, because it's so handy. Just this UV toolkit area, but even if it's not organized into a nice little toolkit like this, I know it would at least have just a UVing menu where you can access all these options. So anyway, transform options, and there's a section down here that shows the pixels per unit. And whatever number is already filled into that box is a lie. Like, it didn't generate anything yet. Just because you selected it, that is just pre-filled information. So you hit Get, and it'll show you what size the shell you have selected is. And now I'm going to select all the rest of the shells, and I'm going to hit Set, and it'll make all of them the same pixels per unit. And just seeing how everything expanded, I think they need to be a bit smaller, so I'm going to tick down the size until it looks like all these shapes will fit into the box after I adjust them. So at this point, the way I'm organizing these UVs is based very much on how I intend to texture everything. So first I'm organizing the petals like so. And I also want to separate the UV shells based on what is the outside of the petal and what is the inside of the petal. And now I'll do the same thing with the leaves. Outside views on top, inside views on bottom. So now I want them all rotated according to what is up and down. So I'm going to speed this section up a lot, I think, because you guys get the point. So what's tricky here is that I don't know exactly which is the top or the bottom, and based on past experience, I know that's something I tend to like knowing when I'm in the texturing process. So I'm going to go back to the 3D view, just select some vertices at the top of the leaf, and that way I'll be able to see how I need to orient them. So the thing is, you want to maximize the amount of space you're using in this one little square, but not have anything overlap. So I'm going to scooch everything pretty close together, but still with some gaps. Okay, so with these stem pieces, the reason I bisected them is because sometimes with the really long shapes, the only place where you can reasonably put them is diagonally through everything. And that just makes it kind of, I don't know, like it makes it hard to Tetris everything else in there. So I like to avoid that when I can. In this case though, it looks like the stem is actually at perfect height to just stay on one side. So I'm going to undo that cut in the center, and it can just be two solid shapes. Alright, so I sewed those together, and I'm just going to unfold them again because you see it shifted a little bit. And now I'm going to go through and put these petals in just wherever they'll fit. I'm going to keep each pair clumped together. That's just the way I like to have it organized. And there we go! Got some lovely UVs. Some people might do it differently, but this is how I prefer to do it. Right, so we got this flower, it's all done. I'm going to texture it outside of this video and show you guys that render. So here you go. This is the results of modeling and sculpting and UVing a tulip. Thank you so much for watching, and tune in next Monday for a new video.